introduce myself. Usually I'm like, hey, here's, da-da-da. And then there's people that, I've been seeing for the last day. So I apologize because you might hear something that I've already told you, right? But I'm going to take you guys through a presentation that I call the future of marketing, right? That's very bold. I'm going to predict the future of marketing, and I have no artificial intelligence, I promise you. But before we start, I just want to tell you guys a little bit where I am. Before I'm going to start a little bit backwards. I'm going to tell you where I am, then I'm going to show you where I come from. I'm in a 1-year-long non-compete. I'm calling this a little bit of house arrest because I was at Nike for 5 years as the global director for football, soccer, right? And I left Nike back in October, accepted a job at Adidas, and I just moved to Germany 2 months ago. But as I was leaving the office, they told me I had to wait a year to start my job, which is, it's good and bad, but also I took this as a huge opportunity to do the things I love. One of the things I've always wanted to do, it was actually to teach. So I went back to my school where I graduated at Clemson University, and I created a brand new course for them. It was called Brand Me, The Power of Influencer Marketing. And I had the chance to teach juniors and senior year students for the brand communications team. I've joined Clemson board for the business school, where there's a huge movement happened. We just hired the associate dean from Stanford University to help us relaunch our business school. The president announced a new building of $85 million and in a very prime real estate location on campus. So I'm doing all these cool things that I've always wanted to do. And then one thing I want to do as well was to write a book, right? So the manuscript is going to be ready on August 15th. I promise you, it's one of the most intense experiences to actually go through because you think you can. I thought, I'm just going to write a book. And then I just sat down and I'm like, holy cow, this is tough. And then I got to a point where I got stuck literally 2 months. I couldn't even look at the document. I was mad. I'm like, and then I started feeling like really dumb. I'm like, why can I not do this? And then I decided to go to my origins of what is the reason why I'm writing the book? What is the purpose? And the book's about leadership, and it's about leadership in the digital age. So I went back to my Nike school of thought, said, I need a manifesto, right? Why? What is the rally cry? So I'm going to start by showing you guys a video of the manifesto of the book. Actually, I'm using this opportunity to actually test the concept. So if you guys have any criticisms, or feedback. Let's not call it criticisms. Let's call it feedback. I don't even say constructive feedback because every time somebody comes to say, can I give you a constructive feedback? And I'm like, oh gosh, it's something bad, right? So, but I'll love to hear your thought. But also if you love it, I also love to hear your thoughts, okay? So.
If you want to be a leader, you should seriously think about acting like these wolves. Except for the part from the coyote blended now. These wolves adapted a leadership system made of group and community, and they are not the only ones. A new generation of leaders is here to stay. They are not bosses, they're captains. Empowering their teams with passion and creativity. Not because they are weak alone, but because they are stronger together. They are faster, more wired, more adaptable. Their team is hungrier than yours. They are leading a revolution.
That's how we need this one!
We just gave it a name.
So, you like it? Yeah? Why? You did? Nice, awesome. What else? Nothing? That's awesome. You, what? Yeah, it looks cool. Okay, cool. I'm just giving. Was that?
Rather than being the boss that
Yeah.
just tells everyone what to do.
Yeah.
Actually being
Yeah.
part of the tribe, being part of the pack.
Awesome. Love to hear that because just to give you a bit context is the reason why I wanted to write a book, as in my career the last 15 to 20 years, I started seeing a lot of great leaders rising and just forgetting who they are, right? And I would say if you really want to know someone, you give them power and money, right? And then you see their true character. And then I started looking at people who actually stayed, and then the whole notion of authenticity and like being like leading with the pack, right? So I've interviewed 26 C-level executives across the world, 13 industry, 21 nationalities, video interviews, but also did an online research with more than 100 people to understand like what is really happening in leadership, what do people want, and how can organizations transform themselves to embrace this new generation, because the young generation, the Gen Zs, they hang in groups, they don't do anything alone, they are part of multiple groups, right? They have the running group, the yoga group, the wine club, and they play different roles. So we can't expect people to just walk into the organization and change who they are. And this whole pyramid of like hierarchy of one leader at the top, right? So I didn't stop there as well. I actually did a lot of desktop online research on the hierarchy structure and the behavior of animal leadership. So the wolf came from the inspiration of hunting as a pack, like wolf as a pack. So I just want to set this up before we get into it, because I think it's really important a lot of times for us to get to know where we actually are coming from, because that shows a lot why we're doing certain things and how we do certain things. And then today I'm going to talk to you guys about the future of marketing, but I always say a lot of times we get obsessed with what's the next big thing, and there's a lot of big things right in front of us that we're not capitalizing on. So I picked up 3 macro trends that I'm going to go a little bit deeper on it, and I'm going to talk about a little bit the constructions, like 5 quick slides. I know some of you guys heard the story that were here yesterday, but there's a lot of new faces, so I want to share that. Then also time for change in this new era, and how influence and storytelling, it's a huge opportunity for everyone. I think it's a theme that emerged from yesterday and today as well with everybody. I was born and raised in Brazil, right? And I've played football my whole life. It is the crazy nation of football. But it's actually, it's a nation of 200 million players, because everybody who was born in Brazil one day dreams to become a soccer player. But I realized when I was 16 years old, not because I realized that, but because my dad made me realize that this is not for everyone. I used to play for the Youth Professional Academy in Brazil, and I did play, like most of my friends actually playing in World Cups. Then I got a professional offer to move to the first team. I come home super excited, and I tell my dad and my mom, hey, I just made it. I got a contract. It was tons of money, $300 a month, and then I'm going to drop out of school. My dad very calmly looks at me and says, that's great. So where are you going to live? I'm like, Dad, I'm going to live here. He goes, no, to live here, you have to do 2 things. Go to school and get good grades, and then you can play football. And I'm like, that's fine. I'll go live in the dorm for the club. They had a dorm under the stadium with 60 bunk beds. And I just left home with a backpack and a soccer shoes. Say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm a professional soccer player. A week goes by, Dad comes to the club, and then he's like, listen, you can't even sign this. You're 16 years old. I have to sign. And the news is I'm not signing, and you're actually going to go to the United States as an exchange student for 6 months. And he said to think about life and learn English, because you need to see the world. And at that time, I thought he was my biggest enemy. I left, he sent me to the United States. I couldn't speak 2 words of English. And I have to thank Jerry Springer to help me learn English, because when I moved to the United States, I had no friends. So after school, the first host family I lived with, they would come home at 7:30 p.m., and I would just be at home by myself, just watching TV. And I was fascinated by TV shows because we didn't have that in Brazil. And I was like, so that's, I've learned that way. Of course, I study a little bit more. And it's been 20 years since I've left home. Never went back. I have lived now in 7 countries for work. But I've realized that soccer, it wasn't just a goal in my life. It was a means to a much bigger life when my high school coach introduced me to college sports. And then I got a soccer scholarship to play at Clemson University. And then I always, for some reason in my life, everything ends up leading into soccer again and open up other opportunities for me. And that's just kind of the circle of my life. But to me, after I graduated, playing at Clemson, and I got all those kind of like all American, all ACC, all that stuff, and I'm like, I'm making pro. I'm going to the draft. Clemson is known to send players to the MLS, to the Major League Soccer. And my senior year, I was watching the draft with all of my teammates. 7 of them get picked, and I don't. And that, to me, is when my floor completely disappeared. And I lost my identity. I didn't know what to do. And I realized it was time for me to change. And then that's when I've learned I had to become a different type of pro and take the things I've learned from sport and apply it to my life. The way I build teams, the way I lead teams, the way I approach from a discipline standpoint, the way I've learned how to deal with failures, right? I mean, I failed tons in the last 15 years, but I also think I got a couple of things, right? So I had to take that mindset into trying to make the clicker work and figure out what was it. And then this is actually, Sidney Poitier is an inspiration that came to me in the process of actually writing a book, where he's the first African-American who actually won a first Academy Award. And then he has this quote where he says, your mindset needs to convey your authentic you. And then I started to take that and said, well, that's true, because most of the big leaders that I see who stay there, they actually don't get corrupted with their own values. And I'm not saying there's a set 3 big values that you should have. We all have our own values, and you should kind of stick to that. And then if everything else that is coming on your side is not aligning to your values, maybe you shouldn't do it, right? Last week I was down in Brazil giving a talk to college students, and one girl raised her hand and she goes, hey, how do you do to change a little bit the culture of your company, especially when your boss, he's the type of person, he just wants you to do what he wants to do. He doesn't listen to you, to me, and I'm just so frustrated. Can you tell me what I could do to change that? I was like, yeah, it's pretty simple. Write it down if you guys want to write it down. Get another job. Don't try to change your boss. Like, he's probably 20 years older than you, and he is not changing, right? So if it's not adding and aligning to your values, I say no. I won't do it. So, and I think that's, and especially right now, where everything changes so fast, like, and you have to change really fast. But in order to be precise, you have to change within the context of the lane you want to stay in. I love this video mainly because when I grew up, I used to watch Formula 1 a lot, and I remember the pit stop, it was like 10, 12 seconds, and then today is less than 3 seconds, right? And that's the pace into how the world is that we're living. And I always hear people say we're in an inflection point. Actually, being in an inflection point is a constant now. And you always have to just not jump from the platform, just keep moving up and moving up. So I'm going to play a quick video from Louis C.K. He was in a talk show. I think the way he contextualizes is kind of funny. I know he's been a little bit in the mud in the last year or so, but it's more about the message and not the messenger. So I just want to preface that.
happy. Like, in my lifetime, the changes in the world have been incredible. When I was a kid, we had a rotary phone. We had a phone that you had to stand next to, and you had to dial it. Yes. You don't realize how primitive, you're making sparks in a phone, and you actually would hate people with zeros in their numbers, because it was more, like, oh, this guy's got 2 zeros, screw that guy, why do I... And then if they called and you weren't home, the phone would just ring lonely by itself. And then if you wanted money, you had to go in the bank for when it was open for like 3 hours. You had to stand in line, write some of check like an idiot. And then when you ran out of money, you just go, well, I can't do any more things now. I can't do any more. That's it. Yeah, that was it. And even if you had a credit card, the guy would go, oh, can you bring out this whole can you write? Yeah. So you have to call the president to see if you have any money. It's all good things. You have to call the president. Yeah. It was ridiculous. Yeah.
Do you feel that we now, in the 21st century, we take technology for granted?
Well, yeah, because now we live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots that don't care, because this is what people like now. They got their phone and they're like, it won't. Give it a second. It's going to space. When you give it a second to get back from space, is this I was on an airplane and there was internet, high-speed internet on the airplane. That's the newest thing that I know exists. And I'm sitting on the plane, they go, open up your laptop, you can go on the internet. And it's fast, and I'm watching YouTube clips. I'm in an airplane. And then it breaks down. And they apologize, the internet's not working. The guy next to me goes, this is bull. Like, how quickly the world owes him something he knew existed only 10 seconds ago.
How true is that, right? It's not only us, but also this generation. I don't like to label Gen Zs, millennials, and all that, because I think it's just the mindset, right? And the mindset of most of our target audience, it's like this. And if you're not there with them for what they want, when they want, how they want, they just, ignore you. They will ignore your brand. And then there's this guy, Mark Schaefer. He's an author. He has like 6, 7 books. This book, it's called The Content Code. And he has this quote, which is, it's a theory that he developed. It's called content shock. It's when the increasing volumes of content intersects with our limited human capacity to process everything. My favorite Twitter handle is actually BBC News. The proposition is very simple. It's breaking news. So when BBC News says something, I know it's something important, right? Then I pay attention, because they conditioned their consumers and the audience to know when they say something, it's something important. A lot of times brands think you got to just push out content all the time, and then you have this Facebook, creative studio that you just have a bunch of kids just editing stuff, just pushing stuff out. People won't process. And sometimes the best thing to do is actually not to say anything. And then that actually creates a problem. As a brand, how do we cut through? How do we get noticed? And I always like to go back to the past to learn about the future. And there's a quote from Albert Einstein where he says, we just can't solve our problems with the same thinking that when those problems were created, right? So people change, your consumer change. You can't just say, hey, this is my target audience, and then, wait 10 years to rethink who they are. So when you look at this in a digital, the statement I like to say that creates a lot like controversy is, I usually go, look, digital is dead. And then people looked at me, what are you talking about then? You're in a digital summit, right? Because you can't think of digital anymore as just a function, right? It's a mindset, it's a way of working. We saw yesterday the idea of lean social, right? Like prototype, test, scale, prototype, test, scale. We heard today Monster, Alex talking about, it's about having conversations, not having a campaign, right? and you have to change the way you think. The same way the marketing discipline evolved from advertising, right? It was just an advertising function, to a discipline, and to now, in most cases, the CMO is the number 2 of the company, right? Digital is right there in the trajectory. Like, companies now have chief digital officers, right? So, and all of a sudden, all that is just going to blur. So there's no more offline and online. It's the world is digital. Digital is your oxygen. So you can't say, let me get an ad, cut 10 seconds, and push on Instagram. You have to create content based on the native platform and how the content is created. Otherwise, it's just not going to cut through with the consumers. So when I look at these 3 ways of connecting now, this is where I come in and say the future of marketing is now, and it's right there in front of you. Stories and moments are ephemeral, right? Like, I wish Ryan was here from Google, but if you look at Google search and trends, a really cool killer content will last 48 hours. And then there's something else, right? So it's very fleeting. Gaming. There are 1.2 billion FIFA games played per day. And when a consumer sits down to play FIFA, on average, they spend 24 minutes playing the video game. Imagine you as a brand going, well, I'm not saying for you to go sponsor a FIFA 18 or 19. You got to find the right platform, but gaming. And the reason why gaming is so important right now is because in society at a macro level, there's this skepticism about entities, about brands, about governments, everything that's like institutional. People were skeptical. That's why you see this plethora of movements happening. The Me Too movement in Brazil, pretty much people actually impeached our president, a year ago. It's just because every week there was like a movement. Everyone's on the street. I know in Brazil we always like to find an excuse to not work, and then every time there was a movement, all of a sudden there was a music, and then it becomes into a party. but people want to belong. And the gaming community gives you the sense of belonging because you're part of it. And messaging is on fire, right? So I'm going to unpack those three things. So there's this. How many of you guys have heard of dark social? So dark social, it's all this thing that happens in the messenger platforms, and brands are excited about, but they're also very scared. Because once the content goes viral on WhatsApp or Messenger, that's great, but it falls off the track of your digital journey, and you can target, retarget, and so forth. That's why WhatsApp is investing heavily on doing WhatsApp for business, because they want to show value for the brands. There was a projection that there was about 1.8 billion new users that are going to come into messenger platforms in the next 18 months. 1.8 billion new users, right? On average, we send 200 direct messages a day versus 1 or 2 posts, right? So the question is, as a brand, what are we doing about this? And I'm going to share a quick story from my previous role, where we found this insight, and we mapped the 16 key cities we want to own, and we want to dominate the street culture. And we identify the 16 most influential core consumers for a target audience in all those cities. We found this in London. We found this girl, her name is Josie, and she was the most connected and cool chick for the football consumers. And then we dug a little bit deeper, and then we tried to figure out why. Her father, it was a big sports, like football commentator. So she grew up with football. She grew up in the football environment. So she knew all the players. She knows all the up-and-coming players. And because she hangs with them, she also knows the artists and the musicians and the graffiti artists. So for us to connect with our consumers, we brought Josie in. We gave her a paid phone, like we gave her unlimited plan with a phone, and we signed her with the brand where she would get cool products every month. And whenever we had new soccer boots, we're like, hey, Josie, you got 4 pairs here. Do whatever you want. And then she started like connecting with the kids and distributing. And then we were like, hey, we have 4 tickets for the Chelsea game this weekend. And then she would like go hang out with the kids. Hey, here's 2 tickets for you. And then all of a sudden, Josie had a contact list of about 1,000 kids. And then every time we had cool advertising or content that we were going to push it out, we would give it to her before we went out on our channels. And then all of a sudden, she hits 1,000 kids. And then on average, someone between 17 to 21-year-old, they have 700 Facebook followers. And when they feel that like I'm part of this community, that I get access to things before everybody does, they just becomes your voice, right? So how much does it cost to put someone on an unlimited data plan and see your product, right? So not expensive. Drake, his biggest launch last year, 2016, he did this single launch, and then 60% of all his search came in the first 48 hours. This is actually a graph from Google search, and they just died. And then something else picked it up, right? So stories are ephemeral, and it's hard as a brand to stay on top of things, and that's why it's very important to release creative control so you can leverage your power of your influencers. We heard a lot about context and relevance, and being at the moment. This Neymar, Brazilian football player, he used to play for FC Barcelona, transferred to Paris Saint-Germain last year with a transfer fee of 220 million euros at age 24. And it was the most talked about transfer in football history. And then we're getting ready for that because we knew it was coming. And then we started like a meeting with 3-4 people. And the big question was like, what is our point of view? What are we going to say about the transfer? And then we just kept going and going. And then this intern that used to work for me, his name was Luke, he goes, oh, why do we have to say anything? Who has to explain why he's going? It's the player. Let him do that. And then we all kind of like, all these creative dudes in the room and girls as well, we're like, oh, but we got to say something. People expect us to have it. He goes, no, you don't. What you have to do is answer, what do people want when that happens? They want to be able to buy the jersey with his name within 2 minutes of the announcement. So from a creative brainstorming session turned into, oh, how do we do that? How do I flip 60 Nike.com pages in 60 languages within 5 minutes of the launch? How do I make sure I have enough product in inventory at the right places so people can buy? How do we create the iPhone launch effect that we have lines of people wanting to buy? So we had to shift the inventory from everywhere in the world and picked 5 stores and communicate that the jersey is going to be available only on those 5 stores, right? Neymar sold 12 times more jerseys than when David Beckham went to Real Madrid. And this 1.5 million organic engagement, it was the highest ever of Nike history, and we got that in 3 hours. No money. It's about being relevant, being contextual, so you can have impact. Now I'm going to go into gaming, right? There are more virtual football games played in the world than actual game. And EA Sports is laughing out loud. The reason why this is happening is because gaming is transcending cultural moments beyond just the gaming. The culture of football, the life that comes of being a player, is what attracts tons of people. Like the cars they drive, where they go, who they hang out with, So they looked at this as a massive opportunity to create a community. And then when we saw this data that we have here, which is for every minute of English Premier League soccer, there are 26 hours of football played, right? And then there are 38 rounds in a season, and every round there are 10 games. So when you do the math, there are 55 million minutes of video game played for every season of English Premier League. And then when you multiply that by the 24 minutes on average that every consumer spent in front of that, you have actually 20 billion minutes. What an opportunity. So we see this, and we understand that the change that has happened, there was a culture shift that used to be culture comes into football and then goes into the game, and actually became the circular, where culture has influenced the game and vice versa, and became a circular development, that we created this boot. We took the inspiration from the 1990s FIFA game, which it was really bad quality, all pixelated, and then didn't change anything in the product. So we used design as an innovation. And then we made 1,500 pairs only. It was a capsule, high heat product to help drive the sales of our actually franchise of the Mercurio, which is the name of the product. And we sold 1,500 units in 2 days. Amazing. We're like, this is awesome. Look how great we are. 22 million unique visits to the product page. 71 million social organic reach. And we're like, that's awesome. So I called the guy from EA Sports and say, dude, this is awesome. Thank you. This is what we got. He goes, I know. We're really happy as well. Because, we actually made $25 million of downloads in the game. I was like, thanks. I was like, what? I was like, 2.5 million? He goes, no, $25 million in downloads. That's insane. Last week, one of my clients in Brazil, it's a truck. They make truck, like the chest that goes in the truck, family owned, super traditional, middle of like mid-Brazil. And then I showed this to them, and he was like, the father that invented the company, the son, the nephew, the cousin, that's the leadership of the company, right? And then this young guy raised his hand and said, yeah, I've always been thinking about this idea of how gaming could help us, but I never speak because I'm afraid of being like criticized. I'm just, no, but go ahead and talk, because now I'm here, you can talk. And he goes, well, there's this game that's called Euro Truck, and it's an European company, and they actually have their trucks, and they actually have their factories. And this kid plays that game. He says, there's so many people. Every time I play, there's like 200,000 people playing. And then they go into buy our truck, and then they come. And actually, it's so funny because their reception is exactly like ours. And I'm like, look at this. Imagine you do a proper partnership with them, and then all of a sudden, you start getting like $3 million kicking into your bank account from downloads. Because people pay for these things, right? And they're like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's do that. I was like, cool. But that's just to show it's not just about football, right? It's about understanding the cultural aspect of things and finding that opportunity, that it's a white space. Like, it's something that those guys that, it's a 60-year-old company that they started from nothing, and now they're a $1 billion company, and they're afraid of changing. But you don't have to change. You just might have to find a white space that you haven't been there. And now we're going to shift into the influencer storytelling, right? How many of you guys are familiar with this? And I had to bring some case from Adidas before I even started to do justice. How many of you have seen this? No? Great. This girl in the middle, she's the only one that's not wearing the collection. Her name is Danielle Cathari. She's a 21-year-old fashion student that she started to take Adidas clothing, the Originals collection, and take them apart and reconstructing them and putting her point of view on design. And she just started like becoming so relevant in an Instagram. Adidas sees this, and if you go back 10 years ago, any brand would go call the legal firm and say, can you just ask that girl to take that thing down, and we're going to sue her, and we're going to kill her, and she's going to be poor for the rest of her life. Now, what they did, they actually hired her as a fashion designer. And then they paired her with Kylie Jenner and launched an entire collection on Fashion Week in Paris. So the brand gave her a platform to become a co-creator. And then when you look at that, it became a new business unit, right? So opportunities are there because people buy from people they trust. The reason why people are so skeptical about society, about governments. So what happens with influence? It goes to people, right? So how many of you guys have gone to a restaurant, you didn't know where to go, either on a date or on a special moment, and then you just call somebody who you trust, and that person tells you, and you don't even ask questions. You go, yep, I'm going, right? I'm skeptical about Yelp. Like, there was a big problem between my wife and I, because she would not do anything before she reads Yelp. I'm like, babe, how do you know that people have the same taste as you do? How do you know there's not people in the company like writing great reviews, right? So I call my friends, right? That's why influencer marketing right now is such a big thing. And I personally, I don't think it's a fad. I don't think it's going away. I think the model of how you engage, how you interact, and you see controversies like the CEO from Unilever saying they don't believe it. But what I say is also, you have to find the authentic connection to your brand values. Otherwise, it becomes sponsorship. And then you might as well just sponsor a stadium and not an influencer, right? And what I like to frame is like popularity doesn't equal an influence, right? Which is that point. Like, you don't have to think that you have to get Kim Kardashian to endorse something. Yesterday I mentioned, I watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians. I think Kris Jenner, she created a $4 billion enterprise out of no special talent. They're not singers. Now Kylie, she's a model, but only took 5 sisters to get there. But you got to give credit, right? So every time there's some sort of movement like that, like 50 Shades of Grey, I read it. When you have a book that is selling millions and so fast, like, there's something that it's like underlying that you pay attention to. So I'm always in tune with what's happening and to that point. So I've done an exercise where I looked at the top 100 Fortune 100 companies, and I looked at their social media reach. It's 20 million. And then I looked at top 100 influencers. It's 800 million. That is 7 Super Bowl a day, right? So that, to me, I call this unlimited influence, right? It's infinite. The reason why this is important is, and when an influencer posts something, he or she gives you an average of 9% engagement. When a branded content, the part is in Portuguese up there, it gives you 2% of 20 million versus 9% of 800 million. You don't have to be a genius in math to start getting the sense. Stories, engagement goes up, right? 12% versus 6%. So the numbers are there. And this is not media buying. This is all of us engaging with this. You contributing to this. I am, right? So what you see, like Kim Kardashian is a thread here, because I call Kim, first name basis. She doesn't even know me. I tweeted her one day, because I actually wrote an article about the economics of influencer, and I used her as an example, and I tweeted. She didn't get back to me. But I call her the Apple, the Tesla, and the Amazon of influence, right? She has 85% retention rate, right? If you look at that as an enterprise, that's massive. And then when you look at 112 million followers at a 12% engagement rate, And then if you take an average e-commerce conversion of 3%, 1 to 3%, she's actually delivering to you, to your brand, 300,000 buyers. Not engagement, buyers, right? And she does this because she has context, she has relevance, and she has impact. Have you noticed how I didn't put reach here? Because she has impact. And when you multiply those three things, influence becomes currency, right? So, and then the reason why those things happen is because there's some sort of format that actually drives engagement. I love to see and mentioning Coachella because my left top there, it's Coachella. It's a community. Like those are the things that people are craving for. So how do we become part of a community? Declarative, Oprah Winfrey used the Grammy, it was the Grammy or the Golden Globe, as the platform to launch the Me Too movement. I don't think she knew what was happening and what was going to happen. And then all of a sudden the world went out on the Me Too movement. There's this experiment, the personal side. How many of you guys seen this, The First Kiss? What is it? Help me tell the story. They get 100 strangers, right? And they put them in a room, never met each other, and they have to kiss. And then they follow what happens to their relationship. Some become friends, some start dating, some just literally just hook up. But then they post the video. Look at that. The girl gets so embarrassed. It's like, I can't believe I did that. I think a few people actually got married like a few years later. And so they do the experiment almost every year. Super cool. Surprising / opportunistic. Kylie Jenner announced the birth of her baby the day of the Super Bowl. I wouldn't put past them that they actually planned that. Contagious, the ALS, and something that's triggered. The reason why I love this slide is because when you look at this, what do you think is the cost of production to do something like this? Very, very little, right? So if you nail some of those, you're actually creating a lot of impact. And then, the proof is in the pudding. Let's take, this is from Google as well. Number shows that once you use an influencer, right, in an authentic way, you gotta be sure it's authentic. You build 92% of the time, you build a trusted relationship. They trust your brand, right? That creates 51% of qualified leads, right? I met this guy, his name is Dan Kennedy, like super old school. I was in a summit. He did a 3-hour talk with transparencies, no slide. And he says, it's like people think you need to have 10 million people to make a lot of money. He's like, I made my first $1 million with 3,000 people. So it's about qualified lead. And then 81% of people are satisfied. This is my favorite. For every dollar you spend, an influencer gives you an average back of $6.85. Who is good at math here? You can use your calculator. Help me out. So, can somebody help me out, please? Calculator. You're going to help? Awesome. Do this math. 6.85 divided by 5. Because it costs you 5 times less to retain than $1.37. So do 685 minus $1.37. 490, right? So that's the savings. I'm not going to try to show increment of multiply that by 300,000 that Kim Kardashian can bring you. 300,000 people times 490 something.
Yeah, about 1.5.
What's that? You guys get?
1.5 million.
So $1.5 million in savings on your demand creation budget. Would you spend $1 million with her? Especially when she's going to drive another 85% retention. So that 300,000 people that she convert into buyers, 85% of them we're going to come back and buy, right? It makes sense. I do it every time. And what they give you is the ability to react fast in a context, like very contextual and relevant way, and more impact with an organic reach. And I'm going to keep repeating, it has to be authentic. If there's no relationship with your brand, there's no value connection, do not do it. Stories, and almost this is home run stretch. Stories and live, I say, is the new TV. No wonder why Instagram launched Instagram TV. 600 million users of stories on Instagram a day. 20% of all content that's created on Facebook are from live. And when you do that, you increase your retention in 3 times. It's just right there in front of us. The future of marketing is now. I love those videos because then you got to click. Then here's an example of an authentic connection, right? Ford launched the new Lincoln Navigator, and then they got Serena Williams to endorse. I'm going to show you a video, and then we'll talk about it.
I got my first Navigator when I was about 18 or 19 years old. My sister was like, well, you have to name it. And for whatever reason, I named it Ginger. Ginger was all white, and she had 22s, and she had rims. I felt like, I was kind of balling in a way. It was like my first huge purchase. We had a lot of fun with Ginger. Ginger drove us to practice. In fact, we had a special playlist. And now I'm entering a different moment in my life. I'm a mom, which is still so insane to me. Everything is working in a full circle. I always had a connection in the beginning and now later on in life as well. Serena Williams needs to be in the Navigator. Let's just be honest.
It's real, right? Like, it's different than you see Matt McConnell driving a car, no words, and then they show the rain, the radio. Like, this is real. Like, I believe she did her first car was a Lincoln Navigator. And now they look at the opportunity that she's in a different moment of her life with a mom, and she can no longer drive her Porsche Boxster, or, she needs an SUV. Boom. It's real. So this is the last case study, right? With this whole notion of stories ephemeral, live is the new TV. This is the last big thing I did before I walked out the door. We saw that, and we went to a big agency and said, look, next 6 months, no film. Big problem, especially for Nike, where everyone knows this cool, killer film. So we did this because we did tons of research, a lot of qual research, talked to more than 100 people around the world. And one of the insights, we actually had 3, but I picked one to tell you this story, is that Nike was far from the reality. Consumers told us that, yeah, get a LeBron James, get a Neymar, I'm never going to be that, right? So they felt distant from the brand. So we came up with a strategy that we had to bring the players from the stadium to the streets, right? And connect it in a relevant way. So we came up with a proposition called Athlete Live. And Athlete Live is when we connect authentic story using the power of their influence to amplify our message, right? And the way the formula works, you get an athlete, you map not with one influencer, with 4 or 5 influencers, and sometimes an influencer is not a person. It's, in the case of football, there's this company called soccer.com that they started as an e-commerce platform, but now they're actually one of the biggest editorial curator of football content in North America. Then pull all that through digital, but do it in a very hyper-local way, right? And the reason why we took Neymar to North America, to Los Angeles for 3 days on an athlete tour, is because we had a strategy for him that in order for him to become a global icon, not a football icon, he had to become relevant in the United States. Anybody in the world, entertainment industry in the US, it's the validation point. So we built an ecosystem, athlete in the middle, brought him to Nike East Los Angeles. East Los is a very large Hispanic community in Los Angeles. And then we got him at a cover of Sports Illustrated. For the first time, a football player made it to the cover. We took him to Jimmy Fallon. 8x8 is a football culture editorial magazine, so they did a 5-page story. NBA Finals. Basketball influenced the football culture. And Neymar told us his biggest dream was actually to sit at courtside. But we went one step further. Who sits next to him? So he's obsessed with Lou Hamilton and Odell Beckham Jr. So they got to hang out next to courtside. And then we had probably 3 months of conversation. What shoes he's going to wear that day? Because that's what we wanted to push. So got to have a product connection. Then we took him to sneaker shopping. How many of you guys know Complex? So they have a YouTube show which they take celebrities to do sneaker shopping. And then we took Neymar to do sneaker shopping, and we do the YouTube show. Connected with the young athletes, and then we took him to a store visit. So you do a full circle, finish at retail, drive conversion, right? And here's a quick video of what we call his drop-in in East Los Angeles. Oh, I forgot to say as well. We partnered with a Brazilian street artist, and he did a mural installation right on the side of the Nike store where we built a football pitch, like street football pitch for Neymar to play. We released a mixtape, so we got also a rapper to do a mixtape for Neymar. And then we did a review of that. You're going to see all that, and we invited all the kids and then drove everyone through retail. So, very intense 4 days, within 6 months. And this is the sentiment we get. A 12-year-old kid said, I can't believe I got the chance to breathe the same air as Neymar. But what does that mean for the business? 2% engagement in all of our channels. 42 million views with 3 stories. We had a kid from the agency, they have a young, talent, creative person from the agency taking over our channel and taking over Neymar's channel and going live. Phone, Instagram account, relevance. 420,000 people watched us live for 16 minutes straight. And there was a number I'm going to share, but it's not in the slide. We sold $27,000 in 3 hours in the store. Right? And then I always like to finish with leaving just with a parting thought, right? And then the future of marketing, in my point of view, is voice, and it's here. But remember, Alexa is the enabler, not the innovation, right? So how are you integrating voice into your marketing mix as a way that, it become relevant, connected with your consumer, because that's where the world is going. And here's a video, Alexa commercial for the Super Bowl.
It's 60 degrees. Alexa?
Amazon's Alexa lost her voice this morning, costing
Alexa lost her voice. How's that even possible?
We have the replacements ready, just say the word.
You're sure this is going to work?
Yeah.
Alexa, show me a recipe for a grilled cheese sandwich.
Pathetic. You're 32 years of age and you don't know how to make a grilled cheese sandwich. Its name is the recipe, you.
Alexa, how far is Mars?
How far is Mars? But I'm not supposed to know. I've never been there. This guy want to go to Mars. For what? There's not even oxygen there.
Alexa, set the mood.
Now setting the mood. You're in the bush. And you're just so dirty. And so sweaty. Because it's hot in that bush.
Alexa, reboot.
Alexa, play some country music.
Don't dance now. Let me body move.
No, Alexa, country music.
So tons of influencers, super relevant, culturally relevant, and this is it for me. I didn't take notes, so I can ask myself questions. No questions? Really? Wow, okay. I'm worried. I'm like, wow. So I don't have my notes. I'm going to do something different. I want to thank you guys for the time.